Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
Your Success Podcast is proudly sponsored by Your Tax Partners, specialists in helping business owners and property investors to understand the wide range of tax issues that impact on their income, gains, and overall wealth. Now, let's get into the show.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos.
And I'm Mo, and I'm really excited about our guest today. After hearing him speak at an event, I knew we had to have him on the podcast. He's now the founder of a platform that matches people that want items moved to people that actually do the moving, a platform called Shift, which is currently turning over £1.7 million per annum and is running operationally profitable, which is something rare in the fast growth startup world. And he's only 24. So welcome to Your Success Podcast, Jacob Corlett.
Thanks for having me.
So Jacob, we'll come on to Shift a little later on in the podcast, but could you walk us through how you got into business originally? Have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I've always been an entrepreneur, sort of. So from the start, left the Isle of Man, where I was brought up when I was 16, went to the Peter Jones Enterprise Academy. They did a residential one-year course in Amersham in Buckinghamshire. It is a very entrepreneurial course. Basically, every week was like a apprentice challenge. So one week was a Jamie Oliver challenge, where we had to sell street food for a week. And another week was Alfa Romeo, where we had to go and run one of their garages for a week. And we were put into teams, and a different team won every week. It was about 60 people. It was quite a surreal experience thinking back when you were only 16, 17. That only lasted for 1 year. Left that, wanted to live in London. So I naively decided to rent a townhouse in the centre of London that cost, I think it was £1,800 a month. And I'd never earned any money in my life. This was, other than a paper round. And that's another story. So basically, I couldn't afford that. So I put all of my money into a deposit on that and just assumed that I would just be able to create a business that would make money. So I ended up subletting every room in the house in order to make that work. And it did. I lived rent-free, but didn't make any money on that. And I basically dipped in and out of different projects doing what I guess you could call freelance web development. So that included consultancy. So I did consultancy for a private bank, Duncan Lorry, that no longer exists. I did lots of little projects and was involved in lots of startups just for almost simultaneously, but dipping in and out. One of them was a payday loans company that has gone on to do quite well. So anyway, I was doing my own projects on the side, basically inspired by whatever I was getting paid to do. And I ended up setting up a true removals company or moving home company. And that was 2012. Started that with no funding, no investment. I didn't even know that you could get loans beyond a credit card. I was very naive. I just thought you had to build a business the hard way. So I built that from one old van to 35 vans and 40 odd employed drivers between 2012 and 2016.
So was this a side project or was this your...
Well, it very quickly, within 2 or 3 weeks of starting that company, it turned into a full-time business. And that was always profitable from day one, hence how I reinvested its success into building it to what it ended up as. And it was all, it did quite well. So, I mean, overall, I guess, without talking too much detail into turnovers and profits, it was definitely profiting over 80,000 each year, and there was very few people involved in it. The only issue is that when I never took a wage from it, that was essentially my wage, and I was doing 50 different roles. So I was training the drivers, I was, on the phones myself for a lot of that period, booking in the services, or I was building the websites, because, I'm a tech guy. I always wanted it to be, the best way to get a removal quote. And, in the end, it just didn't scale. So that leaves us in 2016 with, when I started Shift.
So let's go back to the beginning. Why did you just always found that you were entrepreneurial and you didn't sort of get along with jobs and things like that? You said you went to the academy quite a young age.
Yeah,
so how did that come about?
I don't know. They sort of just contacted me and they just said, we'd like to invite you to interview. And I have no idea whether it's one of these things that's just a cold calling email or, or whether they speak to the people in schools and say who has an aptitude for this, the business. I was in the first few weeks of sixth form and they, I've got something on my nose that's annoying me.
It's another business idea.
Where was I? Yeah. So, I don't really know what happened there, but that wasn't I've been entrepreneurial ever since I can remember. Yeah. I think to an annoying extent, it's almost always been there. And this was a big thing at the Peter Jones thing. Yeah. Where it was almost a recurring question that they would say ongoingly throughout. And it would be like, right, are entrepreneurs born or made? And I don't know, in my case, it's if I am an entrepreneur and if that is what an entrepreneur is, I was born this way, and I have a constant need to improve things.
Did that manifest in being bad at jobs, or sort of always wanting to suggest better ways to do it when you were employed? Or
I've never been employed.
Oh, you've never been employed.
What about your schoolwork? Were there specific subjects that you were good at or weren't good at, or were you just trotting along?
Business, I was good at. I didn't really care about school. I guess that's the thing. I was always doing something else. So like I said, newspapers, it's another story altogether. I started working for the local newspaper and they paid something like 35 quid a week to do a few hours work delivering newspapers in the evening. And I started speaking to it's obviously, not a legitimate way of doing things, but looking at who was paying for the leaflets to be infilled and just going to them directly and saying, I'll put them in for half the cost. And I stacked that up into a small business. And I was like 12 then. So I guess, if we're trying to pinpoint a point when I suddenly became entrepreneurial, it's quite difficult because it's looking so far back. So, yeah.
No, it's just interesting because some people go through jobs and actually they don't find that they're entrepreneurial per se until they've actually had a full career and then they step out and they really love it. But actually to see it the other way around is really, really interesting. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. So talk to us about Shift and the business that is Shift.
So Shift basically comes from, so if I roll it back, how did we come up with Shift and why? What's the inspiration? Why Shift? Why bother doing anything? So I was running that previous company. It was a true moving company. People were using us to move home. They were using us for getting stuff to or from B&Q or IKEA. But there wasn't we were everybody in that industry is marketing it towards moving home, and there's so many other requirements, so many other needs, but the pricing is in a way where it really needs to be quite a substantial item that you need to move in order to make sense on that pricing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we saw that basically. I saw with that previous business over the final 2 years that it had essentially plateaued. Turnovers were the same. We tried to launch it in more geographical areas. That was based solely in London, nowhere else in the UK. So we expanded that. We tried to expand it outwards. Turnovers stayed the same. Got to a point where it was like, right, okay, this isn't scaling. So we decided to start to wind things down. Around that time, I started speaking to Mark Pearson, and I'd already known him from previous years ago. and we kept in contact loosely. I started speaking to him about what I would do next, and he was sort of peddling the idea that I would join one of his other investments, or that we would try and find a way to sell or to make something out of that previous company. Basically, through the conversations that I had to him, it was very much like, right, okay, so it was almost like a thought experiment each time I went and sat down with him. So it'd be like, right, okay, well, have you thought about this? Or, okay, go away and have a think about this piece of data. Go and have a think about this. So that's what we did. And one time I came back, he basically said, right, go away, have a look at the data. Look at what has changed from 1 month to the next. Look at what's changed from 1 year to the next, and see if there's anything there. So that's what we did. We went back, we looked at the data in 2012, when obviously we were a lot smaller, and in 2016, a lot bigger. However, the metrics were worse in certain areas. For example, conversion rate, which you'd expect to be better because we had a serious amount of repeat customers by then, 4 years down the line. But the conversion rate from site visit to booking, a lot worse. Why? And I think just to say the difference, it was like 15% when we first started in 2012, 5% in 2016. And a theory that I went back with, that Mark didn't necessarily agree with, but has hopefully been proven successful with Shift. Back in 2012, there were different buying patterns. So back in 2012, this was the theory, by the way, this was my theory. So I still don't know whether this is necessarily true, but in 2012, people were prepared to book on our schedule. So they would call us, let's say, or book or go to the website. They would see on the website, or they would be told on the phone, I want to move home next Saturday at 4:00. Okay, no, unfortunately, we've not got 4:00 free, but we can be with you at 2:00 on Sunday. And they'll go, all right, okay, yeah, put me in for that slot in 2012. Against 2016, where people would be like,
everything's
no,
on demand.
I want it. Yeah, I want it 4:00. Yeah. Also, we saw in these stats a huge increase in next day and same day orders. When before it was a very small percentage, it was all advanced orders. And potentially it was down to the way we marketed. There's obviously a million things that factor into marketing, but I think, and this is what the core thought behind Shift is, I think that the world has changed in between 2012 and 2016. I think that the startups, if you can call them that now, like Uber and Deliveroo, they've come into the world and they've said, you can book and we'll be there now. And it's going to be the lowest cost that you'll find, and it's going to be the best service, and it will be everywhere. And they've done that, so consumers expect that, even of very segregated and I don't want to say unexploited,
like commoditized. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, unexplored industries through technology, like moving. So that's.
But it comes through to everything, doesn't it? I suppose, like Amazon Prime and things like that. Everything is like, I want it yesterday, and Amazon Prime now in London. So I think it's a good theory. It makes sense in terms of our actual nature
and I think
has changed.
Even if our nature hasn't changed that much, really, the marketing is telling us that we should be changing in that way. So even if it just influences a very small section, that was my theory anyway, that the reason that we had less conversion was because the world had changed, and it had changed because of all of these big companies coming in and saying, you can have it now,
Why settle for any less?
Yeah. Do you find that customers are happy to pay a premium for that level of quick service?
Well, maybe one day, not at the moment, and we're not charging a premium at the moment. At the moment, back to Shift, really, like we're angling it that because of the way that we do things, we can provide lower cost than a moving company, than a removal company, or a Pickford's, or even an independent man and van. It's all just basic logistics. We have 2,000 odd drivers across the country. We're always going to have someone who's closer and available at the exact time that you want. So we can do it lower cost. And we believe that gives a disruptor effect. And when you have a disruptor effect, you get numbers like Uber. It means you can grow very quickly. So maybe in the future, the route to go down may be to
a surge.
Yeah, to say potentially, if you want to book right now, there's a premium. But currently, we've just got it wide open. We want customers to come to us and not to have barriers. And price is one barrier.
What is the time? What is the lead time to actually get? Do you have an average time that you can get drivers out in?
So it depends on the area of the country. So places like London, we have hundreds of drivers who will be available at any one time within the centre of London. So in the centre of London, you could book, and a van could be there in theory in minutes. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. But we don't, as of yet, plan to this year. And this is all about our expansion plans. But we as of currently, we don't say, your van driver will be with you within 27 minutes. We just say he'll be with you within the next hour. So, yeah. But, imagine how the world changes if you can buy anything anytime, or if you can move home like that. Moving things is the thing that, we're doing here. Yeah.
So maybe in 4 years' time, you'll be the driving force that changes consumer behaviour again.
Oh, hopefully.
With 2,000 odd drivers, you say, right
shifters,
across shifters, I like that, right across the country. There's a lot of data to manage, to analyse, and things like that. You said that you have a daily profit and loss report. Mm-hmm. How do you manage your daily profit and loss report, and how do you use that to inform your business decisions? Because I tend to find that most businesses struggle to have good monthly data, let alone daily data.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Why would they struggle to have good monthly data?
Poor reporting.
Okay.
The crossover between, let's say, manual and digital.
Yeah.
Record keeping and things like that.
Yeah. And just not having one central bank for reporting.
Yeah, I'd say our monthly is probably worse than our daily in terms of accuracy, or in terms of not accuracy, struggling to put it together. The thing is, what I was talking about before with what I put together daily, that's really for personal management accounts in order to be on top of things myself to inform decisions. When you look at stuff on a monthly basis, so I mean, we have thousands of customers every month, hundreds of customers every day. How can you look at that on a month by month basis? Because we see surges when there's a bank holiday weekend, or when there's, a small change in the weather. When it was snowing the other week, no jobs happened, as you can probably expect. These are self-employed drivers. They don't want to work, so they decide not to. And the customers decide that they don't want to move on that day. So our numbers go right down. So we have to do it by the day. We have to be able to look at things on a day-by-day basis rather than on a month-by-month basis to get a really clear picture of what's going on. So we basically, or I personally, basically import absolutely every bit of data that we have. So that's everything from booking numbers, site statistics. So it goes way beyond profit and loss. It's just statistics in general. All of the costs prorated down in a very estimated way to the day, leaning on certain days. So obviously on a Sunday, you don't lean so much on the wages, and it's manipulatable, but it helps me. It's all done from the perspective of helping my decision be the right one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, having that business intelligence at your fingertips.
Yeah. It means that right now I can just go to one spreadsheet and say, what would happen to the business if, I don't know, obviously I lost Alex. I don't know. Let's say that Alex got run over by a bus. What would happen to the business? And I'd be able to financially tell you that very quickly. Yeah. And these things do happen in business. People, they get ill, they leave, they go on extended holidays and maternity leave and all of this. And we've seen it all, and you need to be able to make decisions on that level, not just, I hope that all makes sense.
I don't know whether it makes sense. Yeah. It's interesting that you've got all the data there at your fingertips you can put in, and then you sort of build the model around it to.
Yeah, and that's happened over time. Yeah. So I didn't start at day one and think, let's build like this huge system of spreadsheets so I can work all of this out. I've built it, and I've basically become a spreadsheet expert and been able to do it.
So you mentioned Mark Pearson before. How has it been working with Mark? So he's from Fuel Ventures and also founded my Voucher Codes. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How has it been, and how did that come about initially?
So as I just said before, like I've known him for a long time. He used to host, when he ran my voucher codes, he used to host hackathons at his offices on Tower Bridge, and me and a few people from the Peter Jones Academy used to go there and not do anything tech-wise. We'd just like pitch business ideas to him as naive children, and just, you know. But yeah, so I knew him from back then, and, you know, had him on Facebook and kept in contact. So basically, he started helping me with what I was going to do next. We landed upon this idea. He basically said to me, "I will be involved, and you know, our fund will put in the money. You've got to hit the criteria. The criteria are." You've got to be based from London. As you can see, we're not based from London. You've got to be a SaaS business. We're not a SaaS business.
Just for our listeners, what's a SaaS business?
Software
as a service.
Yeah.
You've got to be turning over some money, and obviously I've got that previous company at the time, but I'm actively saying to him that we're winding that down. So essentially no turnover. Those are some of the things, but basically I didn't hit a single one of his criteria. And he was like, "But don't worry, you know, I make the rules, so we'll find a way. Just make sure that you've got turnover." So that's what we did. And we basically set out over 6 months to make turnover. And we did. February 2017, so over a year ago now, we launched minimum viable product, very basic version of what Shift has now become. And Mark came on board as a director. We were expecting his funding immediately, but it took until October before we actually received it, because of the way that funding with funds work, in that they collate in all the funds and then pay them back out. So yeah, that's
and how has it been? Yeah,
sorry, I've just answered.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
And why I'm working with him. It's good. Very. So I mean, insight is the main thing. Having somebody on board at a director level, who's done it all before, who can give you advice that, you know, you can't read in the books because it's either too specific or they wouldn't want you to hear it, you know, or it's not, it could be construed in the wrong way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Honest feedback,
I guess.
You know, and that's really valuable. I guess you've got to think when you're talking about somebody who sold businesses for tens of millions and, you know, been involved in businesses that have, you know, been unicorns and are worth $1 billion. You know, how much would you have to pay for that advice?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I guess that's. Does that sum up the experience?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, you can see why it would benefit you. Yeah. Working with someone like that. So I want to move on to talk about something that really interests me. This from a selfish point of view. The recent talk you gave. You talked about sitting down with your team and asking them to think 10x as a phrase, which is sort of popular at the minute. Which I found really interesting and quite inspiring. Can you talk to us about that? And then I'm going to ask one of the questions that maybe I asked actually when I was there, because I thought you gave a good answer to it. So yeah, can you talk to us about that?
I remember the right answer. 10x. So it's 10x feels like a buzzword.
Yeah,
I don't think it's the same. 10x.
So I think it was you were talking about either recruiting drivers or getting
10x
customers.
Makes me think of Grant Cardone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that 10x. It's a different 10x. So yeah, I was talking about that. It's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
So it comes back to when I was. Shall I tell the whole story?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And when I was at the Peter Jones Academy, as I said, 60 people all across the country, residential. We lived on site, all young. Every week was a different thing. One week, this guy came in, can't remember his name, and I've tried to look him up since and work out who he is. And maybe one day I'll stumble across a TED talk or something where he's
listening right now.
Or if I didn't say all of this and it wasn't on public record, maybe I could have claimed this idea for my own. But yeah, fantastic speaker. Came into the room, tables like this. Everybody sat around them in groups of 6. So 10 groups. He brought with him a poll, and he has Mo told you?
No.
Okay. I don't know.
Go on.
Right. Okay. So there's a poll, probably about the length of the table, and he got 2 step ladders, and everyone was like, "What is this guy doing?" Like, in complete silence. He sets up right in the middle of the room the poll, and he doesn't introduce himself. He just says, "Your task for the next hour is to put together a presentation in your teams to say to the entire group as to how you're going to get your team over that poll." And I was like, okay, right. And everybody put together like plans, and we thought it was all about team building, or we thought we were going to have to actually do it, or some people came up with really creative ideas as well. And we were talking to the other teams. It was like a collaborative thing. Everybody was like, "Oh, what's your team going to do?" And the ideas. So we came back, and he said he looked at them and he acted really disappointed, and he was like, "Oh, no, you've just not got the idea of this at all." Like, and he acted so annoyed. And then he said, "Right, okay, everybody, follow me." Went out onto the field outside the college. And the way that the college was built, there was a roof. I guess it was more like a balcony. Like he was up on the balcony bit, and everybody else was down there. And he said, "Right," and he put the step ladder up, and he said, "Right, I'm going to put this up here now. You need to get over the whole college now. Not just over over what, I don't know, step ladder, 10 foot in the air, 30, 40 foot. You need to get over that. Go back in. You've got another hour. Please be more creative this time, sort yourselves out." Everybody went back, and they were like, "Right, okay." And everybody put down their ideas. And then he looked at them and he said, "Right, okay." And then he snapped into his actual talk after 3 hours of him being there. And he said, "Right, okay, well, my name is whatever it is." Well, I wish I could remember his name. "And I'm here today to talk about how you think about things, and how just a slight change in the way that you think can bring different results. I've had experience doing X, Y, and Z." And he did his whole talk. And then he said, "Right." And then midway through his talk, he said, "Right, and I'll just take the top one off the pile." And he said, "Here is one of the ideas that you were going to pitch to me for getting over when it was 10 foot." And it was like, I don't know, we'll make a human pyramid, or we'll...
solid idea. Human pyramid.
We'll build up all of the tables. We'll, put boxes, a trampoline, whatever. And he was like, "Right, okay." And then he was like, "Right, okay, now let's go through the other one for the toilet, and let's see whether you can see the thing that I meant when I said it wasn't good enough." And it was things like, "Right, we'll get a helicopter. We'll build a jetpack. We'll get one of those huge industrial cherry pickers to lift our team over it." And it was all of those. And then, because it was a very weird talk, like I said, his final words after saying that was, "I'm just going to leave you with this to think about. With the second presentation, all of those ideas would have worked for the first, for getting it over the 10 foot. But with all of every single one of the ideas for the 10 foot, the ones for the 40 foot wouldn't have worked." And it's one of those things that especially when you've gone through all of that drama, first of all, you remember it for life. But when you go through all of that drama, you don't, it doesn't sink in straight away. You're sort of like, so the room is sort of left silent. But it's really defined almost all of my business decisions. Like, it's so, So
talk about how it applied to
how I've
the example
applied
you
that.
gave. Yeah,
and so
really
obviously I don't really need to explain the actual core concept, but just for the sake of making it really simple, the core concept is that if you make your plans for doing that and look at those when you're brainstorming, when you're thinking about things, then if you fall short of that, it doesn't matter, because you're still over that smaller that smaller bar, so set your bar high, right? And so basically, how do I do it? So when you saw me at that talk, it was just after we'd done a huge recruitment drive for shifters across the country. And we needed, before that recruitment drive, we had about 1,000 drivers. We wanted to get it to 2,000. We built up that 1,000 over a year. We wanted to build it up to 2,000 in a month. So we didn't need 1,000. I set the goal of 1,000 because, first of all, with this type of thing, you need to have leeway, in case people leave and that type of thing. But also, what ideas would work to bring on 1,000 drivers in a month? So if I'd have said to the team, if we'd have sat down and said, right, let's have a brainstorm about how we build this plan to bring on 25 new drivers this month, what I would have got as an example, and I can tell you, knowing the team, I would have had Amy, who was in here before, she would have been saying, well, I'll set aside 2 hours a day to call drivers. I'll call people. And, Alex, from a marketing point of view, might have said, we could do a referral campaign on the existing drivers, for example. We might have somebody else say something else. They're all going to be those sorts of ideas. And all of them are good, solid ideas to bring on 25 drivers. If I say, how are we going to bring on 1,000, even though Amy definitely doesn't know about budgeting within the company and how much money we have towards this, she will not say, I'm going to call drivers, because she'll know that to call 1,000 people in a month is going to be very hard work and she wouldn't want to volunteer for that. She would say, okay, what about we send out, and these are the ideas that we got, what about we send out a bulk text to everybody who's ever inquired about becoming a shifter with us? And, from a marketing perspective, what about if we put together a really targeted Facebook ad at people who are looking for jobs and also happen to have got previous experience doing X, Y, Z? And all of these ideas were so much bigger. But then when you actually look at what those ideas bring to the table, I don't know whether I'm saying this coherently.
No, you are. Yeah, carry on. No, it's really good. Yeah.
Those ideas also are very low cost per unit. So it means that even if we scale that down and we say we only want to bring on 25 drivers, that just means we only send 200 texts, not what we ended up sending. What, 80, was it 8,000? 80? It was 80,000. We ended up sending 80,000 text messages, and I'm not sure that would be legal in a few months. But yeah, we ended up sending 80,000 text messages, huge Facebook campaign. We did it. But if we'd have only wanted 25, we could have just sent 2,000.
Scaled it down. Yeah.
And that 2,000 text messages would have cost a lot less than 2 hours of Amy's time every day, which would probably cost, £500 or £600 in her call time against 2,000 text messages that cost 30 quid or whatever.
I really like that thinking.
So when you scale things up and then bring them back down, that's where you can create. And it's all about idea generation. It's not about anything else, And also, when you target people in a certain way, they tend to think like that as well. So,
and it's defining what good looks like, I guess. If you say, this is the level at which we think we need to be thinking, then everyone opens up. Whereas if it's like 25 and then the job's done, it's sort of the level of thinking is a lot more constrained. So I really love that. I really love that.
And whoever that presenter was, if you are listening, please make contact.
I think he was
probably owed a few quid.
I think he was a motivational guru of something. But
and it stuck with you, which is really interesting as well. That
it's not left me since the day, because I saw a lot of talks and a lot of them are very bad. And I can't remember any of their names, so I can't say anything wrong. But a lot of them were you've got to. I remember one guy showing us the positions that we should hold our feet in networking events. And it's like, okay, I get it, but that's nowhere near as valuable as that. The problem with a set of advice like that is that you almost want to apply it to absolutely everything. And obviously there are things that you can't apply that to.
And I think the other thing that was interesting, it was either me or someone else asked the question in the talk, was around that being demotivational to the team. But I like what you said around you're almost quite clear that you don't need to hit that, but you want the thinking to be at that level. So it's not like 1,000, and if we actually get 800, everyone's failed and everyone's sacked. It's actually
is it more motivational for your boss to come in and say, we're gonna hit 1,000 target, whatever that may be, cardboard boxes sold, whatever. We're gonna hit 1,000 in a month. If we don't hit it, you're gonna lose your jobs. Or if you don't hit it, we're gonna have problems, or I'm not gonna be happy with you, or there's gonna be or you've got to hit your target. Or is it better to have somebody, if you need to hit 1,000, to come in and say, let's hit 10,000, wouldn't it be great? And it's a different way of doing it. Everybody knows if we don't hit 10,000, if we hit 8,000, they're going to be, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
They know that it's a pie in the sky, amazing figure, and they know that that's the way that I am, and they know that's the way that the whole management throughout the company is. Now that we're quite big, every manager has that ethos. And
that's good. And we talked about that we did a podcast on the difference between leadership and management, and it was very much what you said, like let's do it together. It's us. We're all going through this together, rather than a dictate that you guys need to work hard to hit this. It's actually more collaborative, which is really good to see.
And it's inspirational.
I really hate holding people to account management styles. I don't think that's the right approach. I mean, it might be in some industries, but it's not the right approach in startup.
Yeah.
In a business that relies on people's creativity to push it forward. That you can't hold people to account on bringing in a result. You have to inspire them and motivate them to bring in a result.
That's really good.
But I'm by no means an expert in this field. I'm not. I'm very new to management.
I think it's a journey, and that's what this podcast is about. Everyone that we interview is successful in other people's eyes, but they rarely, and I think it's part of the traits of entrepreneurs, they rarely find themselves successful because they're always looking at the next person, and they're looking at their mentors, and they're looking at people that have run businesses that look like that, but that are 10 or 15, 20 years ahead. Yeah. But it is really, it is a journey, and it's good to take a snapshot of that now and then speak to you again in a couple of years and follow through.
Success. It's an interesting...
Yeah, well, that actually comes on to our next question.
Leads beautifully to the next session. So, as you know, this podcast is all about success. And as such, we ask everyone that we interview, what does success mean to you?
What does it mean to me? See, you said that you were going to be asking that, and I didn't actually think of an answer. So... Obviously, I have my goals and my ambitions, and I'm not motivated by future success. Defining it loosely, I feel that success is where I'm at to an extent, which is like not dreading coming to work and absolutely loving everything that I do in that day. And some days I don't feel successful, and that's when I feel like I'm failing, or when I'm not enjoying it. So I don't know whether that
makes sense.
Answers it.
Makes a lot of sense.
So it's not about a goal for me, and for some people it is. It's like I will be successful when I hit this, but for me, I'm successful with. For me, it's all about the journey. Even now, I'm my biggest fear is that the business gets even slightly bigger to the next round of funding, things change, and then I might not enjoy it, and then I'll want to quit, exit, which I can't because you've got tie-ins with investors and vesting periods on your shares and all sorts of things, and I'll want to set up a startup because that's what I enjoy doing. That's what I've always done, and that's what I've always enjoyed doing, and that's where I feel my success is. But it certainly for me is not in monetary value. It's not in the amount of people sitting in your office, and it's not none of that.
It's having the freedom. It's not
irrelevant.
Dreading that Monday morning feeling on a Sunday. You're excited. You want to come to work. You feel inspired.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe freedom. Yeah. I mean, I'd hate the idea that somebody said, right, you have to come into work today at that exact time, which I guess most people take I take completely for granted. Because nobody else has that freedom, even within the same company. I wouldn't find it appropriate that somebody else could just decide that they don't want to come in. Yeah.
Okay, so can you give our listeners one bit of advice to help them achieve success?
I guess success is different to each person, so it's a very difficult one to find out what you actually define success as being first. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And,
So
then,
someone
and then just build your life around it, design your life around whatever
that's good advice.
that is. But it is different to everyone.
Well, I think that one of the things you just said there is that you've had the self-awareness to know actually what does make you happy and to design a life around that. So that's a good bit of advice.
But if I take my, I said that my parents are in business, but in a very different way. So, my mum and dad have both run businesses very separately in different things. My dad owned a jewellery business, my mum an accountancy practice. And what they define as success is very different to me, in that not that they're running it for the lifestyle.
So your advice would be, for anyone listening to this,
Find out what your own success
find
is.
out what is your why, find out what is your vision.
It might not be in business. In fact, I would put money on 99% of people's success is not found in business, because business is hard work and stressful. And I would say that 99% it's going to be in a hobby, or it's going to be in a sport, or it's going to be in something not to do with business, because business has 100 angles. And luckily for me, I like jumping from thing to thing, but most people don't. They like the same thing each week.
Yeah.
And
it could be as simple as something like weight loss. It could be anything.
Yeah, exactly. And you could define success as being, ridiculously healthy. I wish I had that one.
So thank you for your time today, Jacob. It's been absolutely inspiring hearing about how you've achieved so much so quickly, and I feel that the best is yet to come.
Thank you.
And like Mo said, perhaps we can revisit another follow-on podcast in a couple of years just to see how far you've come. Because I've no doubt you're going to perhaps change things the way that Uber have and other things.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that'd be
if not, I'm sure
awesome.
I'll be doing something else.
So what's the best way for people to get in contact with you or find out more information about Shift?
Well, I guess they could find out more information about Shift through Googling Shift and having a look at the website. But to contact me directly, LinkedIn, that's probably the best way.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you again. But we want to know your thoughts and experiences on Jacob's journey. Drop us an email on hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com or get in touch on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram.
So thank you again, Jacob, and thank you for listening to Your Success Podcast. Please click subscribe, leave us a review, and we look forward to your comments on the Facebook page and YouTube channel. So I've been Angelos.
And I've been Mo.
And see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast. Your Success Podcast is proudly sponsored by Your Tax Partners. If you're in business or an active property investor, talk to them to better understand your tax affairs and your options. If that's you, there is a special offer waiting for you at tiny.cc/successpod. That's tiny.cc/successpod.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.